The pilot episode still holds up pretty nicely. The special effects of Ralph flying are pretty cheesy. They're obviously not film-level quality special effects. But the Ralph, Bill, and Pam characters are quickly established, and you can immediately see what kind of dynamic will be created by all of them. The plot is... well, other than setting up the suit and characters, nothing else is that memorable. The first episode obviously sets things up for the series. Ralph becomes the new teacher for the outcasts of the school. He takes them on a field trip to the desert where he first meets Bill. Bill's FBI partner was killed, and now Bill is trying to find out by who and why. We get the appearance of the little green guys, as Bill describes them. I always thought it was pretty cool how the aliens talk to them through the car radio. Bill's dead partner comes out of the UFO, gives them the suit, they fly away, and inevitably Ralph loses the instructions. Soon Ralph is arrested and tries to convince his lawyer, Pam, that he isn't crazy, and explains what exactly happened. Of course she thinks he's completely lost his mind. Ralph and Bill have different views of what would be the best ways to use the suit. Bill is thinking of much bigger things, like winning the Cold War. They don't have to mull it over for too long, as they quickly stumble onto a presidential assassination plot involving the vice president and a lot of bald guys wearing sunglasses. They succeed in stopping the bad guys, and in the end decide to focus on local crime for now. In the pilot, Ralph is going through a divorce and fighting to maintain custody of his son, Kevin. Gradually, Ralph's son would disappear from the series, which I think was probably best. Too much time could have been wasted on this kid, and it could have really shortchanged things with the main trio on their adventures. Plus, television kids I usually find annoying anyway. During the early episodes, Ralph's bad egg students included Michael Paré, before he was Eddie of Eddie and the Cruisers, and Faye Grant, before she was kicking alien ass in V. The students themselves aren't really that interesting. Most of them act like cast-offs from Grease or Welcome Back, Kotter, but Ralph's devotion to helping them and trying to balance his teaching gig between wearing his red jammies is the real asset to having them in the series. The series began as a mid-season replacement, and that first season of 8 episodes consisted of plots that weren't too outrageous. They were usually just the generic bad guys of the week for a cop television series at the time. Gangsters, kidnappings, stolen US secrets. Honestly, I don't really remember particular episodes of the show. The stories just seemed secondary to the 3 main characters, and the most entertaining thing was watching how Ralph, Bill, and Pam would get it together to be able to catch the bad guys in the end. It was exactly what Cannell wanted to do in the beginning, what he described as a show centered not around a superhero, but on character comedy. The show did have problems in the beginning. One interesting one was by the time the 3rd episode aired, the show found itself with a lead character having the same name as a presidential assassin. It's kind of ironic the pilot had Ralph stop a presidential assassination. Afterwards, the creators tried to eliminate Ralph's name being mentioned in a lot of awkwardly edited scenes.
You know, I've always thought that you can tell a great deal about a person by his name. Oh, it's just the perfect name for an educator, don't you think so, Daddy?
Yeah, it's all right.
Ralph, it says a great deal.
They even changed his name from Hinckley to Hanley for a time. I guess they didn't want to remind people of the real-world terrible news happening while watching what was meant to be a light, funny show. Assassination attempts tend not to be a great magnet for comedy. ABC and Cannell also found themselves threatened by a lawsuit by DC Comics, saying the show ripped off Superman. The lawsuit was eventually dropped, though. Gradually, over the course of its run, ABC wanted the show to focus on more outrageous adventures to send Ralph and his pals on. There were ghosts and monsters and voodoo. The show started to become exactly what Cannell didn't want it to be in the beginning. A show more about saving the day kind of adventures and more kid-oriented than the character comedy that Cannell wanted the show to be. There were some high points during the later run of the series, and the trio of characters were still fun to watch, but those scenes got fewer and further between, until the show finally got the axe by the network. They never even got to do a real final episode for the series. In 1986, there was an attempt by NBC to revive the show with the proposed The Greatest American Heroine. Yeah. The pilot sets up a new character to wear the suit, Holly Hathaway, played by Mary Ellen Stewart. Superhero Ralph is revealed to the world, and the aliens insist on replacing him. They find their new hero that Culp stays on to work with, while Kat and Celica take their final bow from the series. The pilot didn't result in a new series, which was probably for the best. The pilot is pretty bad. And is more curiosity for fans to watch, just to see the reunion of the three characters. The Greatest American Hero was already long over by then. Despite the gradual decline of the show, it's still one of those that has really left an impression on the kids who grew up with it. I think what happens in a lot of cases is that people tend to remember the great earlier parts of the series, and the bad episodes later on start to get washed away through the years. Like everyone remembers the pilot episode. Naturally, a movie remake of The Greatest American Hero has been talked about for years. I'm not so sure about that one. Obviously, the superheroic mishaps could be improved by more sophisticated special effects now, and they could probably come up with even more superpowers the suit could do. But replicating the chemistry those three actors had together, that would be the real challenge. Kids who grew up watching the show remember that theme song and the costume and all that stuff.
Look at what's happened to me. I can't believe it myself.
The song is one you'll stumble upon on easy listening radio, or it will be played at weddings or graduations. That kind of cliched junk. I've heard the costume logo was based off a pair of scissors that were on Cannell's desk when they were designing the suit. And then I've also heard it was modeled on an open book and a needle. I don't know exactly which one it is. I kind of lean towards the pair of scissors theory, though. I once went to a convention and Kat and Culp were there, talking to fans, signing autographs, all that stuff. They both seemed really nice. It wasn't any secret that Kat hated wearing that costume during the show.
I'm not gonna put the suit on for a while.
Oh, boy. I think we do this every week. Of course you're gonna put the suit on. Ralph, you're gonna put the suit on like always.
So I got to ask Kat about a story I had heard once that after the series ended, that he burned the costume. He told me it was true, but it wasn't like it was the one and only suit they had for the show. They had dozens of those things. But I suppose it was sort of a cathartic cleansing of the role, and a relief from all the years of frustration of having to put on that ridiculous costume, which he actually wore again in 2008 at the TV Land Awards. I guess over the years he's embraced that costume a bit more, and how special that show was to the kids who were watching it. One of the fun things about watching those shows from when I was growing up, I knew all my friends were watching them too. The next day you would go to school and have a big powwow in the cafeteria about what Ralph did last night. It was that water cooler recap everyone talks about with television. There was still a communal experience back then with TV. Practically everyone was watching the same thing, or at least everyone knew about it. I'm not really sure that exists anymore.
I don't know. I don't get it, man. I just don't get it.
I grew up on this guy, Tony. He stood for something that's not around much anymore. I really don't know how to say it, but, well, he means something to me, and I thought I would share it with you guys. I grew up on this guy.
It's sort of strange when I think about all those old television shows that are being remade now. There's so much affection for those old shows by the audiences from those times. Somehow they've stayed in the pop culture consciousness, and eventually someone thinks it's a great idea to remake them and introduce them to a new audience. Plus they can cash in on their popular titles. Entertainment viewing is so much more fragmented now. It's not great odds that I'll be watching the same thing all my friends are watching tonight. Don't get me wrong, I like all the options for entertainment we have now and the convenience and selection of it all. But it makes me wonder, how many television shows being made today will have the same kind of impact on audiences as those older shows did? Which ones will people remember and will end up on the planned remake list? Or will there even be enough of an audience for them to warrant the idea? Nowadays, they plan on making a movie just a few years after a show goes off the air. But 30, 40 years from now, is there going to be a renaissance of some of these current shows like all these older ones have gone through? And which ones?
I mean, I could kill the guy who designed this suit. Why couldn't it have narrow lapels and a cutaway jacket? Why did it have to be long johns and a cape?